Well, hello, my friends. This is Big Daddy Cass. We're back with part 2 of Lady's story. Pardon me. Lady, being a spirit from doggy heaven, is able to put herself in my body and use my body as a vehicle to tell her story. So that's why you see a slight change in our voices. Anyway, here's Lady with her story. She's anxious to get on with it.
Jack, our mailman, trained me to take in the mail. He worked with me for weeks until I had it just right. Jack would hand me the mail, and I would deliver it right to Cass's favorite chair. Soon I started doing the same thing with the newspaper. My reward was a pat on the head and a simple phrase, "Good girl." Sometimes Cass would talk to me like I was human, and I could understand all he was saying. I learned to nod and shake my head when he was talking to me, and even though I couldn't understand every word, he thought I could. Usually by his actions and his expressions I knew what he wanted. You know, it's pretty obvious that Cass liked us four-legged creatures much better than he did you two-legged ones, because he always treated us so much better. I never saw him hit an animal, but I saw him beat up many a human. Cass had a real temper, but he never lost it on me or any one of my kind. Cass sold our house on Roosevelt Avenue, and we moved clear out on 6400 South State, just beyond State Street. We lived in a duplex, surrounded by a bunch of duplexes. Cass called it our house of sin, because all of our neighbors lived on the other side of the law. Our carport was where they all liked to party, and let me tell you that some of the wildest, wooliest parties went on. Cass fit right in because he could drink all of them under the table. My Cass could hold more booze and still navigate better than anyone. Cass had been a heavy drinker since the day I met him, but his bouts with drinking were getting more frequent and more out of control than ever. I loved my Cass, but I hated his drinking. Although Cass was never mean to me when he was in the state of inebriation, he was less caring and somewhat thoughtless. Alcohol changed him from a kind-hearted person that he really was to something quite different. I loved him, but sometimes it was hard to tolerate him. We had a bunch of hookers that lived on the east side of us, and a bunch of doper musicians that lived on the west. So our house was always like Grand Central Station. There was all kinds of actions going on, day and night, night and day. And I remember when we left Roosevelt Avenue, Cass mentioning that we had $100,000 in the bank, and even though it wasn't working, or he wasn't working, we'd be all right. But you know, that wasn't true. Only 4.5 months later, we were running out of money, and Cass still wouldn't work. Come to find out that most of the big parties that were going on, Cass was footing the bill for, and with booze and dope running like water, they were not cheap. Cass's destiny was knocking on our door, and it wasn't long before we'd be living in the streets. It had been a little over 10 years now since I first came into Cass's life, and we'd gone from a beautiful home in Sugar House all the way down to the desolate streets on the west side of Salt Lake City. We lived with the degenerates and the transits and the bums and the hobos, all of us outcasts from society. Cass lost his car shortly after we departed from the social system, and which was a good thing because he had set a record for tickets while driving under the influence. We had all been incarcerated a dozen times. Yes, I said we all. Either I was in the pound or shared the cell with him. I became a mascot in many of the jails in Salt Lake, and the jailers all loved me. I'm going to stop here because I want to reminisce a little. Let's go back to some of the good times that Cash and I had together. When we lived in Sugar House, Cash liked to play the guitar and sing. He was even quite good on the harmonica. Sometimes in the middle of the night, Cash would say, "Come on, lady, let's go." And he would grab his guitar and his harmonica, and off we'd go, usually to his favorite spot in the middle of the country club. It was on a golf course, and the golf course overlooked the city. Well, Cash would play the guitar, and we'd sing until the sun come up. "Hey, I want you to know I'm not a bad woofer. I can howl right along with the best of them." These were the best of times. These were the times when I got to know Cash better than anybody else. Know him and love him. Now I'll stop here, and I'll be back in a bit with part number 3.
Well, thanks for joining us. We'll be back in a few minutes with part number 3. Take care.